I'm just curious. Does anybody notice that when evangelist speaks, these great glorious evangelists, when they speak these great prophetic events that are going to happen in people's lives because they can quote a couple of scriptures and vomit out a couple of interpretations? Has anybody ever noticed that it never comes to pass? And maybe two or three coincidental things that happen in people's lives, but has nothing to do with miraculous blessings that they pronounce over people's lives. And they've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, some of them 50 years. The accumulation of wealth by these men is astronomical. But does anybody ever think that the integrity of the person they're talking about is unending? I mean, the capabilities of God is monumental. It's from the heaven to the earth, from the earth to the heavens. You can't measure what God's abilities are. We know the integrity of God is astronomical, is beyond the scope of man's understanding. But what about the integrity of the messenger? That's what we should focus on. Forget about God for an instance. He can do anything he says he's going to do. Matter of fact, if he sends out his word will not return void. But what about these messengers? Come on now. Give me a break. These messengers prophesy wonderful, beyond the scope of imagination, from prosperity of mere vagabonds that can give a little bit of money, activate this faith that they come. But if God didn't speak to these evangelists to say what they say, do what they do, if God didn't send these persons, then they're fraud. And you tell me, why doesn't it happen? I was involved with the Full Gospel Church for 20 plus years. And the only person that gained prosperity is the dude behind the pulpit who said he was a preacher sent by God. I was in my kitchen and I didn't think, wow, I got to put this together, man, because I was deceived. I was deceived in what they were saying, but I wasn't the only one. They actually believed that God put these words in their mouths. They actually believed that the words that they spoke and the agenda that they came up with was inspired by God. They believed it with all their heart. They believed that the words that they spoke, the messages that they preached, were inspired by God, as if it was Moses walking into Pharaoh's room. Come on now, seriously. Everything that Moses prophesied came to pass, not to some extent. There wasn't 2 or 3 locusts. There wasn't 2 or 3 frogs or reptiles, whatever. It was an event full course. Locust beyond the imagination of men, where you couldn't say it was just a happenstance. It was just coincidental. God made it sure that when Moses prophesied locusts, that who he prophesied that God was going to do, he did. And it wasn't for the destruction of the kingdom of Pharaoh. The amazing thing about that whole circumstances with the plagues that Moses was foretelling was for the salvation of Pharaoh. You see, it wasn't to bring opportunity for prosperity to Pharaoh. It was to deliver Pharaoh, right? Wouldn't destroy his kingdom. It was that Pharaoh would heed whatever Moses was saying, because to prove that what Moses was saying was not of his own mind, but from the mind of God. That's why these glorious events were occurring. And you can see in Matthew, I believe it's 9 or 10, where he drew the 12 to him and gave them power. Well, as far as I know, none of these evangelists were there. You could tell the 12 because they're listed in the Gospels. Now, I didn't see any evangelists that speak and puke these wonderful promises forth and say that they're included in that list. I didn't see their name there. They're 12, period. That's end of story. And they came back in joyful exuberance. that the things that Jesus Christ, that God revealed to them and sent them out were happening. And Jesus said, well, what's the big deal? What's the problem? Why are you surprised? This is nothing. That God opened blind eyes, that God can have the lame walk, that you rebuke demons. It's nothing. Why are you rejoicing over this? The mere fact that God would talk to you, God, the creator of heaven and earth, God that brought the heavens together and formed the sun and the moon and the galaxies, and you're jumping up and down about a blind eye being opened. It's not a glorious event, but do you realize that God the Father has spoken to you? Do you believe that God the Father has recognized you by name? Do you believe that God has taken you and called you out of the world and spoke to you and sent you out for his glory and honor? It's not the mere fact that these miracles are happening in Moses' life. It's the mere fact that to prove to Pharaoh that these signs and wonders are of God, because they're not coincidental. These evangelists that puke forth this crap coming out of their mouths, it's just coincidental stuff. They read this coincidental stuff that happens. But if not every single person that gives doesn't have these miraculous signs that they prophesy, then they're not sent by God. How much longer will people follow these frauds? It doesn't work. If God said it, it's going to come to pass. So keep giving your money. Keep attending these camp meetings, these crusades, because it just plainly doesn't work. And you keep on thinking, man, if you just give a little bit more, God's going to recognize your faith. God recognizes your faith when he speaks to you and you obey what he says, and it doesn't come through any fraud that's demanding money from you. It happens when you listen to God. And I was at that table getting discouraged that I don't know about this faith thing, this faith movement thing going on here, because the only thing that was happening in their lives is that they were getting rich. That's all that was going on. I didn't see them prophesying these events that were going to take place in people's lives, and God miraculously fulfilled what they said. They were just spewing forth these promises and get rich doing it. And the dude would say, this one evangelist came in, and this is broken down, disgusting hotel. He goes, God gave me this hotel. Well, it's disgusting. And you got it by fraud. You stole people's money. You invested in this hotel in a broken down community, and you're boasting it's miraculous? Are you serious? Disgusting. But that's what these men do. And they dupe you through doing it. And I sat at the table, and you know that God commands us to forgive. And my father had cheated on my mother, left his family for absolutely no reason, just because he was almost tuned to do it, in like his almost genetic makeup. And he left my mother, and I had severe unforgiveness and rage in my heart. When I forgave my father, the healing began to come. And God opened my eyes right there. And I always felt the draw of Almighty God on my life. And in that instance, God opened my eyes. Not to these people that were being fraud, but because of God's goodness and holiness. And God was actually speaking to these people in the Bible. And the simplicity of it all said, well, then why doesn't he speak to me? Because God speaks to those people in the Bible, surely he could speak to me. There wasn't anybody standing between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There was anybody standing between Jeremiah and Moses and the man beside the pool of Bethesda, the Samaritan woman. God spoke to them personally, and God can speak to you as well personally. Stop following these frauds. They're nothing but frauds.